Good day and welcome to the 6th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge. This battleground of intellect is brought to you by Say What with support from the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. I will be your debate mistress, Nicole Natsai Chimanikire, also powerfully known as .co.Nicole. Let the games begin. Before I read out the motion, I will start by letting the teams hear, the four teams about to battle it out in the matters of persuasion, to introduce themselves, starting from the podium to my far right, going all the way to my far left. Podium 1.
My name is Brian Tulani Gwanda from Lupane State University, and we are going to be the opening government.
My name is Rudolinda Mtsingwa, and I'm the Prime Minister for this debate.
My name is Luis Kande, I'm from HIT. We're going to be the opening opposition.
Hello, I'm Precious Bondokoto, HIT.
Hello, my name is Tadiwa Taka from Gwanda State University. I'm going to be the whip.
I'm Ashley Nyati from Gwanda State University. We are closing government.
Hello, Dalithan Lovu from Women's University in Africa, closing opposition.
Hello everyone, my name is Fadzai Chikore from Women's University in Africa and I'm the closing opposition.
Introductions having been made, the motion reads. This House believes that the sex education curriculum should overstate and exaggerate the risks associated with sex. I will repeat. This House believes that the sex education curriculum should overstate and exaggerate the risks associated with sex. Right now, we call upon the Prime Minister of the opening government. Ma'am, make your case.
We value overstating and exaggerating because it promotes prevention, which is something that is very important in today's debate. We tell you that the status quo has failed, and we tell you that it has not done anything to reduce the burdens on an already failing health sector or impacts on the affected individuals. It has also done nothing to ease the burden of fatigue on already tired donors. And we think that this is something that we value in today's debate, and we're promoting prevention by overstating and exaggerating. And we tell you that because of this, we value our main three stakeholders, which are the individuals, the service providers, which look like state actors, and the donors. And we think that these three have an interconnected relationship that is best preserved and best advocated for when everyone is responsible for their actions. We also tell you that overstating and exaggerating generally looks like targeted mediatization of the risk and consequences that are associated with sex. We tell you that we regret a narrative that has told us as young tunes that sex is sex, mdavazo ki mdavazo. We tell you that advertising and giving out sex education that does very little to tell us of the consequences of sexual education is a deprivation of our sexual and reproductive health rights, and it is something that we regret. And we tell you that we value the rights of young people and we value a safer and healthy society. We also tell you that we regret the censorship of media, and we regret how media and general sex education has said, well, you shouldn't have or have HIV, and the best way for you to not get HIV is to either abstain or use condoms, full stop. Why shouldn't I have HIV? Why is having an STI bed? We think that provision of this information in an overstated and exaggerated manner is particularly important. Why the emphasis on overstating and exaggeration? We tell you that the risks that we have are far too high. Over 85% of all the HIV cases in sub-Saharan Africa are with young people, young women in particular, and we value these vulnerable groups, these vulnerable matches, and we think that they are best protected by us as side-opening government. So what are we saying to you today? We're telling you that, well, we have stereotypes and narratives that we are fighting in media and the sex education that are saying that sex is pleasure and sex is vibes, full stop, which is true and fair and fine. Sex is fine and sex is nice, but what are the consequences associated with sex? We think that as service providers, as state actors, and as the government and the healthcare providers, if you're not telling people what are the consequences that are associated with sexual intercourse, what STIs look like, what a failed pull-out method looks like, then you are depriving people of their fundamental sexual and reproductive health rights, and you do not deserve to hold that effort. We also tell you how we value donors in today's debate, because we tell you that majority of SRHR is funded by donors, like how SEWAT is funded by Sweden, as rightfully written on this podium. And we tell you how over the years that donor funding has reduced and thinned and thinned. And at the same time, the young people who are majority spreaders and the key populations are doing nothing to combat their actions. We tell you that fine, we have had sophistication and medical advancements, and we value that and we celebrate that I can have capote gravia over dilute gravia, which is nice and all. But we tell you that if I'm not responsible for my actions, if I'm not conscious of the consequences of my actions, then that is a failed system, and that is a system that needs to change, and it needs to change today. The reason why we don't have 0 new HIV infections and 0 STIs is not because the information is not there. It's because the information is censored. The information doesn't rightfully state or exaggerate or overstate the consequences. And we think that it's very important if we want to be healthier. And we think that the economic burdens that we're already facing is something that we need to prioritize, because we tell you that we are under-resourced. We listen to our parameters. We're keeping this debate in Zimbabwe. We are under-resourced. We barely have anything to go by or much to go by. And we think that if we're going to continually fund people who do not know the consequences of their actions, then we're not doing right by ourselves, and then we're promoting a society that is further and further deteriorating. Also tell you how overstating promotes consciousness, consent, and responsibility. We tell you that if Rudo has sex knowing of all the consequences that she can have, then she is better protected and we have better SRHR. We want opposition to prove to us how their side of the house better promotes prevention, which is better than Q in any side and in any debate. And we think that our best actors is behavior change and societal change, and we value that. With this, we are proud to propose.
Powerful statement there from our opening government Prime Minister. You are reminded that you have 4 minutes to speak, and as well as we are using the British parliamentary system, therefore point of informations are allowed. I will call upon the next speaker, which is from the opening opposition. Leader of opposition, the floor is yours.
One, two. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you that please pay attention as to what I'm going to tell you. It's not exaggerated or overstated, but it is the facts that I come with. I'd like to begin by saying that the Prime Minister was here talking about provision of information and consequences that are not well known. She didn't even mention anything about exaggerating or overstating this information, meaning literally she was just supporting us, as we are going to prove here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to tell you that exaggerating and overstating information is not actually the way to go about this sex education curriculum. We should begin by fostering fear and anxiety. This is the first cause of exaggerating or overstating the information that we already have. If we exaggerate the information that we already have, we are going to foster fear and anxiety in the young individuals who are willing and who are going to try to do these sexual activities. Whether or not they know the consequences or not, they are still going to attempt to do that. So we can basically just tell them as it is, the effects as they are. For example, let's say someone is an STI. There's no way to exaggerate a person with an STI or like a person who is sick, because it is already bad as it is. As you know that it's already bad. There's no way you can say that these pimples are going to explode or something like that. Also, I would like to prove on to the next point that undermining trust in education, denied. Undermining trust in education is the next thing that will happen if we actually overstate and exaggerate this information. Ladies and gentlemen, overstating and exaggerating is simply like lying to these people for all declined. So if we actually lie, if we actually overstate these things, we are going to show that our education system cannot be trusted, for we are providing people with the wrong points, we are providing people with the wrong facts. We should tell people as it is so that they know what's going to happen. If someone indulges in unprotected sex, they should know the consequences. We should not lie about that. If someone is willing to risk him or herself, let them be. But the facts should be proven as they are. I would like to continue to decline. I would like to go on to my next point, which is lack of credibility and reliability. Ladies and gentlemen, if SEWAT begins to spread false information about sex, who is going to listen to you? Who is going to listen to this organization? And she said that the donors are going to begin to thin and thin and thin. What more if you start exaggerating or providing wrong information? They might just abandon you and leave you, for you are not trustworthy. You are not credible to provide enough information to these students. Again. I was actually getting to that. She was too quick. Okay, let me continue. There's another thing that I'd like to mention, which is inadequate focus on positive aspects. Overstating and exaggerating, as she was saying, is meant to curb these unwanted pregnancies or whatever negative effects that come about in indulging in sex education curriculums or indulging in sexual activities. I would like to say that inadequate focus on positive aspects comes whereby people do not tell the young individuals what can actually come about if we indulge in sexual activities correctly or in a proper manner. So, in short, ladies and gentlemen, I was actually saying, let us tell information, let us spread this information to all the people, to everywhere we can, beginning now, right now, and tell them the truth as a matter at the end, not to exaggerate and lie to these young people. They don't even know. And we begin by falsely telling them that if you get an STI, you're going to die in the following 2 weeks. That's wrong. Let's tell them as it is. If you get an STI, if it's not curable, it's not curable. You're going to live with it. And then you go on like that. So, I would like to provide a solution which actually undermines the exaggeration and overstating they were saying. We can just emphasize on true facts and spread awareness, like say what it's doing. Actually, holding this debate is a good thing. Because I'm going to tell these people that you should know the true facts at the matter of the end. Don't get exaggerated information or wrong information. Thank you.
That was the leader of opposition making his case. At this juncture, we will take a short break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back with more.
I would like to say I'm quite ready for these debate competitions, as you'd like to know them or call them. And also, the hotel feeling for the first time at Say What Hotel Institute, like, it was quite okay. Confusing here and there, but pretty much okay. Everything is just cool, it's just flowing well.
EDUFA is a global work-study scholarship program that helps international students to study in India through scholarships. We believe quality higher education should be affordable and should lead to employment. Our program has already impacted the lives of over 4,300 African students, and we are looking for the brightest minds for our upcoming intake. Join us in this transformative journey where education becomes the bridge to a brighter future. Together, we can shape Africa's growth story and empower its youth to become the leaders of tomorrow. EDUFA is empowering minds and transforming lives.
And one thing that I can say about the competition is that the studio is quite intimidating. There's a lot there, like the lights, the smoke. It's just over the top, but I'm pretty excited.
Dangerous, ndeke bamziligas. Dangerous, akakanodunza bas. Dangerous, ndeke bamziligas. Dangerous, akakanodunza bas. Gari bounce, batamzana tendera itakuchunga. Baya, ndari bounce.
Welcome back to the 6th edition of the Speak and Solve Initiative, acronym SASI Debate Challenge. We have heard from the opening government Prime Minister as well as the opening opposition leader of opposition. We will now hear from the opening government Deputy Prime Minister. Prime Minister, make your case.
Panel, the whole opposition's case is built on overstating and exaggerating as lying, which is not true. Talk about how overstating and exaggerating looks like teaching primary students mathematics, the multiplication table. It was taught not because it was wrong, but it was taught because they should remember that to apply it when doing further mathematics. So what we are talking about when we are talking about overstating and exaggerating, we are looking at social and behavior change among the young people that we are targeting as the target group, targeted by Say What and SRHR policies. Right? And we're also talking about targeting the media is the fourth estate that is peddling such cases, that is pushing for narratives that promote sexual habits at young and tender ages, right? We are talking about our music that we consume on a daily, the ads that are being fed, that are being peddled to talk about condom. They're just saying wear a condom so that you have safe sex, you wear a condom so that you enjoy sex, right? They are not stating the challenges that are there. They are not really stating that condoms can burst. They are not really stating other issues that can be associated with even using that condom, right? Talk about comprehensive sexuality education that is currently there in Zimbabwe. We are saying the capacitation, yes, is there, but it has been focused more on the lecturers and the teachers, right? We are saying bring it down to us as the young people. Teach us the effects of whatever is going to happen to us because after having the sex, right? And what we are pushing for, panel, is that prevention is better than cure. It is better to prevent things than to deal with the repercussions later, right? Look at how it is better to prevent HIV, to prevent getting STIs, rather than the cost being incurred by the government in trying to deal with those issues, right? Moving on, we're talking about how young people are no longer afraid these days. Young people are peddling this sex narrative. Young people talk about these things as if this is a nice thing. No one talks about the repercussions of having raw sex. No one talks about the repercussions of doing ABCD with such. People are fostering, people are engaging, people are encouraging each other to go out to declined. People are encouraging each other to go out. People are encouraging each other to go and have fun. People are encouraging each other to get drunk and have those crazy things that they do whenever they are drunk, right? We are the panel talked about fostering, overstating and exaggerating as fostering fear and anxiety. That is actually not true. This actually makes young people conscious and empowered to make the right decisions that they have to do with their lives. We're talking about the Say What Matter that says graduating alive, right? We are talking of an empowered generation that we want to empower so that they graduate alive. So what we are saying is overstating and exaggerating is not lying. That is the first point. What we are saying is let overstate and exaggerate some of these things so that it gets etched on the minds of the young people so that they know the dangers and the implications of doing some of these things that they enjoy doing and whatever pop culture has deemed as possible, right? What we are saying is also, right, looking at the media, can we have a media that really looks at some of these issues and addresses them as they are, addresses them as they come, right? We are talking of a media that speaks to young people. We're talking of a media that states what really happens, right, with these sexual activities. Talk of how there was once a case where people were complaining about how alcohol companies don't use real experiences whenever they're advertising their alcohol, right? So this is what we are saying is currently happening with our comprehensive sexuality education in Zimbabwe. They are not really telling us the real things that we are supposed to know, but instead they are just brushing on the surface. They are not really digging deep into whatever is going to happen, right? So what we are saying is what we are pushing for as opening government is for the proper sensitization of young people so that we know the risks affected and associated with sex, so that we know what really happens when sex happens, right? We are talking of unwanted pregnancies. We are talking of trying to combat some of these things. Thank you.
And suddenly, words became knives. Moving on to the next speaker, which is the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Please come and make your case.
Now, as a delegation, we caution against the principle of garbage in, garbage out. And the government delegation came here to give us misrepresentation of facts, which is going to lead to misrepresentation of information and a misinformed generation, ladies and gentlemen. And this is not what we want in our situation or in our world. And that is why we beg to say that we should never and we should not overstate and exaggerate the facts of the case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they came here and talked about how donors are tired. Donors are tired. But ladies and gentlemen, we do not need donors to tell people the facts, to tell people what really happens when we indulge in sexual activity, ladies and gentlemen. We do not need donors to be able to tell people the truth and not lie to them or overstate or exaggerate what happens or the effects of sexual activities. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let us be clear to each other. We can never hide the true effects of a penis that is herpes because it is there. No one can ever exaggerate exaggerate or overstate the effects, the pimples. If it breaks down, ladies and gentlemen, that is what is there. We can never overstate or exaggerate further than this, ladies and gentlemen, because that is the situation that will be there. They also here and told us about hold. They also came here and talked about how this is just mathematics from primary. But ladies, gentlemen, are we going to our schools and teaching children that 1 + 1 is equal to 0? That is what the government delegation is coming here and telling us to do. Is this what we want? To lie to our children, because they can never at the end of the day trust us, and that's all their points really hold no water, because they are not really telling us what the advantage of exaggerating or overstating really is. And with that I'm going to move on to our arguments, and I shall move on to the first one, where we are talking about the inadequacy to focus on the positive aspects, ladies and gentlemen. Now, because you want to overstate and exaggerate all of this, not everyone is going to see that there are any positive effects, ladies and gentlemen, that come from having sex. We're going to remove the fact that sex needs to be safe, ladies and gentlemen, because as the government delegation came and said, sex is nice, ladies and gentlemen, and it is if it is done in the same way, and we need to educate and teach these people on how it should be done. We're also talking about how it's going to neglect comprehensive sex education. Now, we stand for educating people in the correct manner. They should know what really happens, and they should know that if they condomize, 1 condom, 1 round. If they condomize, it is going to come out well, ladies and gentlemen. If they take contraceptives, ladies and gentlemen, these effects are not going to happen. So why should we lie, ladies and gentlemen? We should never lie, ladies and gentlemen, because as a delegation, we love you, we care about you, and we strongly believe in giving you the facts of the case. Now, we're also moving on how it overemphasizes abstinence. Now, what are we saying? We're simply trying to say that the fact that we're going to lie and overstate, it is going to take us, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years back, where people really didn't know how to protect themselves and how to indulge in safe sex, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as a delegation, we gave you our solution, but the government didn't give you a solution. Where our solution was to raise awareness through campaigns, through roadshows, and through talk shows, ladies and gentlemen. Let us educate this generation. Let us give them the information that they need, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as a delegation, we want to do it now. Let us do it now. Today, I'm going to be moving in each and every hotel room, educating people on what safe sex is, telling them the truth of the matter on sexual activities. Ladies and gentlemen, as I get off this podium, I'm actually going to go to the government delegation, ladies and gentlemen, and teach them and show them what it means to tell facts and not lies.
The opening opposition truly loves us. At this juncture, we will be taking a short break. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with more.
So far, it's been okay. I guess we're alive, and that's fine.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brian Gwanda. I'm a 4th-year student at Lupane State University, and as she's preempted, we are opening government, and yeah, so far it's going great. Like, we are alive, that's all that matters.
EDUFA is a global work-study scholarship program that helps international students to study in India through scholarships. We believe quality higher education should be affordable and should lead to employment. Our program has already impacted the lives of over 4,300 African students, and we are looking for the brightest minds for our upcoming intake. Join us in this transformative journey where education becomes the bridge to a brighter future. Together, we can shape Africa's growth story and empower its youth to become the leaders of tomorrow. EDUFA is empowering minds and transforming lives.
welcome back to the 6th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge. At this juncture, I would like to remind our participants that point of information to avoid badgering the current speaker have to be made after 30 seconds that the speaker has denied the previous point of information. Please pay attention to this simple rule. Moving on, we will be talking to the next half of our debate, which is the closing government. Member of government, please come and make your case.
So the major argument from side opposition is basically how we are going to be fear-mongering and lying. But at the same time, I feel like it is not fair to demonize fear when it has been responsible in evolution to sustain our existence and our survival as a species. We should be afraid to contract an STI. We should be afraid to have an unwanted pregnancy. We should be afraid to burden our health system. When we say that we are overstating and exaggerating, we are not lying. We want to highlight the extreme cases that will affect us. We want to bring attention to the tails of the normal distribution curve. When they say that, what about the positive aspects of the sexual experience? The positive aspects in this case are not the problem. We want to focus on the problem areas, hence our entire argument. The comprehensive sexuality package in general harnesses behavioral, structural, and biomedical tools to help us come up with a comprehensive package of information delivery. Right? Structurally in Zimbabwe, we've been doing quite great. That's why we have a lot of progressive laws, but we are failing to enforce them. Why? Because the behavioral aspect is lacking. We are saying that our programming must and should target the behavioral aspect of our society. Right? We have to sensationalize and intentionally highlight things that appeal to the emotions of the people, even if the said emotion is fear. Our message has to be captivating. Our message has to be delivered in a way that is palatable to whoever is receiving it. Young people deserve to know the extreme cases. Young people deserve to know what is wrong with whatever it is that they'll be doing. The entirety of the risk in its entirety in general. Sorry, I will not be taking POIs. So, we have a CSE package that is specific to our needs. And at present, right, we have a very high adolescent fertility rate, 108 per thousand in our country, 31,000 new infections in general, 12.9% prevalence rate of HIV. And what are we doing about it? Should we not be afraid of that? What is wrong with being scared of that? And if we continue a passive delivery of the message like we are seeing in tertiary institutions in the current status quo, what are we doing for ourselves? It's a disservice in that if we continue in a passive state, in a situation that is quite an emergency, we are not doing justice to the situation. In public health delivery, we have what is called the rights-based approach and the public health approach, right? The rights-based approach is what they are struggling for when they say that they want us to do things in a way that they like, in a way that does not incite their own panic and so on. But in a panic situation, we shift from rights-based approach to the public health approach that serves the bigger picture. The bigger picture here is prevention. The bigger picture here is everyone knowing exactly what they are getting themselves into by indulging in sexual activity. We are not saying that people should not be prepared to have their own sex, but we are saying that we want to mentally prepare them for the risks associated with it, and as a result have a reduced number of infections, reduced teenage pregnancy, and we are focused on the end goal. That's our argument as side government. Thank you very much. I yield the floor.
And that was the member of government. Closing opposition, I ask the member of opposition to come and make their case.
It's quite unfortunate that when a young person is having challenges with sex, rather than going to their parents who are responsible for their livelihood, they turn to Google to look for pseudo-prescriptions and then go to the pharmacy themselves. This highlights a key problem in which the stakeholders as parents are not educating their children because sex is still quite a taboo topic. Therefore, they rely on their own knowledge and information. Ladies and gentlemen, the clinics are not there as a foundational basis, but a last resort when all other alternatives have failed. The sexual educational curriculum is there to inform, but not to be used as a manipulation tactic to induce fear into young people who have not psychologically developed. Sex is a beautiful thing. the intimate experience between you and your partner. But when you exaggerate these images, you potentially create social or sexual trauma in the mind of a young person, such that when they enter a relationship, I'm now too scared to have sex with my partner because the risks have been so exaggerated that physically I don't even want to have sex anymore. So not only are you going to create stigma for those suffering from STIs and HIV, because now you've demonized them and make them seem like what they're going through is such a terrible thing. You will never want to have HIV because having HIV is such a bad thing as a human being. What about those who have HIV? You create anxiety and fear. People are more scared to go to clinics now because I don't want people to assume I have an STI because the guilt and shame I already experience is exaggerated. So you're not actually solving the problem. You're only making people more afraid of dealing with the actual problem at hand, and you're not engaging the parents. You're not engaging the religious institutions. You're not engaging the people responsible for instilling principles, morals, and responsible behavior to begin with. The alternative approach is to encourage responsibility, to make sex less of a taboo topic so that a child can learn about safe precautions to their parents, and when there are challenges or when they are struggling, they can resolve those in a healthy manner by resorting to the clinics. Point. Beautiful sex is important because it's foundational to a relationship when partners share intimacy. It has many things to do with childbirth, your personal health, and if you're not learning sex from your parents, when you have a problem with sex, you can't go to a sexual curriculum and say, I just had raw sex with my boyfriend and I'm afraid I don't know what to do. That foundational gap between the parent and the child when it comes to sexual relationships is the primary cause of teenagers going out and having sex with whoever they want, whenever they want, and not telling anyone about it. If you don't start at that level, all other levels as last resorts begin to be abused and manipulated. Last one. Yes, and that can be done without exaggeration. When you exaggerate, you overstate certain challenges. You make HIV, STIs look like a bad thing. You demonize these diseases. You demonize people with these diseases. You demonize the act of sex in itself, meaning you induce anxiety within people who have relationships. You make people afraid of going to clinics because you've demonized the act of sex in itself, and they're so afraid of finding out they've contracted something that they don't already go, which is one of the key reasons they don't go in the first place. No one wants to be seen going to be tested for HIV because it's a socially stigmatized topic. And rather than dealing with the social stigma issue, which prevents people from accessing the help they need, all you're going to do is increase stigma, increase anxiety, increase fear, neglect the parents, religious institutions who are key stakeholders. You're not encouraging responsibility, you're just inciting fear. So if you remember anything, remember this. Sex is beautiful. By demonizing it, you create sexual trauma, which not only stigmatizes those who are already suffering, but prevents people from exploring the beauty of intimacy. And in so doing, you don't close the gap between the parents and the child, which is the primary and leading cause of the increase in STIs to begin with. So we don't actually solve anything at all. Thank you.
That was the member of opposition. At this diplomatically heated juncture, we would like to take a short break. Stay tuned and we will be back with more.
So far, I would say the tension is quite high, but they do say preparation is half of the job. So while I can't tell you what's going to happen on the battlefield, what I can say is we are ready to go to war, because in as much as we are here to educate, we also want to win, and we're not going to be shy about it. So I promise you, you're in for an interesting time.
EDUFA is a global work-study scholarship program that helps international students to study in India through scholarships. We believe quality higher education should be affordable and should lead to employment. Our program has already impacted the lives of over 4,300 African students, and we are looking for the brightest minds for our upcoming intake. Join us in this transformative journey where education becomes the bridge to a brighter future. Together, we can shape Africa's growth story and empower its youth to become the leaders of tomorrow. EDUFA is empowering minds and transforming lives.
welcome back to the 6th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge. At this point, I would like to remind our speakers that you are mandated to take at least 1 point of information. As we move on to the last quarter of our debate, I will call upon the closing government whip to come about and make his case. Government whip.
Okay, so in this debate, first of all, I'll start with the closing opposition, what they gave us, right? So firstly, the closing opposition tells you about how right now, if you want to ask anything about sex, you can't literally go to your parents and ask them about sex, but then you have to go online and look at certain definitions that are going to exist. So now let's look at the case scenario whereby your parents are actually going to educate you about sex. Your parents are just going to tell you that, okay, if every time that you're going to go and club, just make sure that you use a condom when you're having sexual intercourse. But then they don't tell you about how a condom can best in that particular scenario and you can have unwanted pregnancy at the end of the day. So that's why we believe that when you look at CSE itself, we are supposed to overstate and exaggerate in a sense that you're actually going to tell people the entails of what having sex means and the risks that are going to be associated even with using that condom at the end of the day, right? He then goes on to say that if actually you are going to overstate and exaggerate, we should look at people that are already living with people that are already living with HIV, and we should look at how we are going to increase stigmatization at the end of the day, right? I asked him a POI whereby I said that, do you agree that CSE packages are actually going to be specific to particular individuals? Then he said yes, right? So by him agreeing to that, that means he actually alluded that CSE packages, right, are going to have programming tools that are literally going to target key populations, that are going to target LGBTQI, that are going to target people that are living with HIV, that are even going to target discordant couples. So if you're going to have all these programming tools existing in CSE, that means all these tools, if they are going to be tailor-made for that particular key population that you are targeting and exaggerated and overstated, that means at the end of the day we do away with problems that the state where they talk about stigmatization and how we are going to make people that are already living with HIV bad because they already exist a programming tool for it. Now going on to what the opening opposition was saying and what the case that continues to even the closing opposition, they are talking about how we are going to have existence of fear mongering. We believe that a fear right now is a necessary tool and a necessary evil, as alluded by my member of government, right? Because we believe that this is a time whereby it's necessary for people to actually fear so that you're going to achieve our objectives that we want when it comes to comprehensive sexual education. We tell you that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you are going to have a reduced prevalence rate, but then it has been proven that the prevalence rate is actually 12.9 and it's actually increasing, right? We tell you of how we are going to be having 31,000 people living with 31,000 new infections per year of HIV and AIDS, and we believe that you want to reduce that number, and the only way for us to reduce that number is if we overstate and we exaggerate, right? They're going to tell you about how we are going to be peddling false information. We don't believe that there is any false information that is going to be peddled, because remember that we are saying that you're overstating and exaggerating. We're telling them the tales of what happens when you're going to have sex, the risk associated of what when you're going to have sex. So we're telling them the tales of this so that they get a bigger picture of what happens at the end of the day, not just us looking at how you wear a condom, have sex and not get pregnant, but we are telling them about how a condom at the end of the day will best. This is the reason why we believe we as government deserve to check this debate. One, we tell you about implications of exaggeration, on how exaggeration can actually going to reduce the HIV prevalence rate, on how we are going to reduce the number of HIV cases that are going to be in existence, because due to fear mongering, people are going to move away from these particular activities that are literally going to increase the prevalence rate of HIV. We tell you about what this achieves on our side of the motion and how the CSE package that currently exists in the status quo has failed us, because we still have a prevalence rate of HIV that is there. We still have 31,000 new infections per year, right? We tell you about how we believe that if the existing status quo is going to be there, there is nothing that is going to be to change. So we believe that there's a particular line that we have to cross so that we are going to have change at the end of the day. With this, I thank you.
The government whip has made his case, and we will move on to the closing opposition whip.
In this debate, the opening government highlighted that we overstate and exaggerate as a method of prevention. But to assume that we need to exaggerate and overstate in order to be heard highlights a leadership crisis. What we're saying is that we're not powerful enough, we're not influential enough to be heard by speaking the truth. What we're saying is that our youth need to be manipulated. They do not have the capacity to understand, to incorporate correct information in their day-to-day lives. So what we're saying as the closing opposition is that the youth have the right to correct information. They have the right to be empowered because they need to know where they are going, why they are going, and what they're going to do when they get there. So if you give them the wrong directions through overstating and exaggerating, you are contributing to a lost generation. You are contributing to various factors, mental disorders, anxiety, depression, etc., because they feel that declined. We're also saying that validity and reliability is the responsibility of leadership. Leaders are supposed to engage relevant stakeholders in order to come up with a comprehensive sexual education curriculum that is powerful and empowers the youth through a diverse approach. We need to tackle problems at an interpersonal, community and societal level without exaggerating the risk. Declined. Exaggerating and overstating the information can cause premature sexual trauma. We now have a challenge of putting out mental health issues that have been set on fire by overstating and over-exaggerating. So we are saying that we're advocating for an ethical approach to disseminate relevant information for the empowerment and betterment of a nation. A thorough, root-based approach that takes away the stigma surrounded by sex. We are saying that we can tell the truth and we can win a generation. Yes, please.
Okay, firstly, this isn't about sensitive leaders who have already failed. Human beings value survival as a species, and overstating will promote conscious choices which will save lives. Why is that bad?
You see, my argument lies upon the basis of our leadership. We are the leaders. It is our responsibility to lead people correctly in the right way through truth. To say that overstating is the only way to reduce sexual risk is to undermine our leadership. So what we're saying is that we are powerful enough, we have the influence enough to tell people the truth and still reduce the sexual risks associated with the pull-out method, etc. Yes.
If the sex education curriculum is curated according to the needs of specific ages, how do you have premature sexual trauma?
Can you please repeat?
If our sexual education package is curated according to needs of a demographic, how do you then have premature sexual trauma?
What we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, that if we have a comprehensive package, we give ourselves the opportunity to monitor, evaluate, and assess already existing programs. But when we over-exaggerate and we overstate, we take away the opportunity from ourselves to correct our mistakes, to do the right thing, and to empower our people. So what we're saying is leadership is really important. We need to be the integral leaders that our youth need. Thank you.
And that was the closing opposition whip. Lewis, have you ever used the pull-out method?
No,
No, you haven't.
I haven't.
Why not?
I abstain.
At this juncture, we will take a short break and we will be back with more. Stay tuned.
Should only partners that have disclosed their HIV status to each other engage in sexual intercourse? Starting with you, Tadiba.
Yeah, I think it's primarily important for them to, first go for HIV testing, because remember that these are partners, right? So since these are partners, that means whenever they're going to have sexual intercourse, it might come a particular situation whereby they're generally going to have unprotected sex, maybe because of the heat of the moment. Since these are partners, probably maybe they live together or there's sort of a bond or an emotional connection that exists.
EDUFA is a global work-study scholarship program that helps international students to study in India through scholarships. We believe quality higher education should be affordable and should lead to employment. Our program has already impacted the lives of over 4,300 African students, and we are looking for the brightest minds for our upcoming intake. Join us in this transformative journey where education becomes the bridge to a brighter future. Together, we can shape Africa's growth story and empower its youth to become the leaders of tomorrow. EDUFA is empowering minds and transforming lives.
Dangerous, ndeke bamziligas. Dangerous, akakanodunza bas. Dangerous, ndeke bamziligas. Dangerous, akakanodunza bas. Gadi bounce, bounce. Basta mfana tendera itakuchunga. Baya, baya. Gadi bounce, bounce.
Welcome back to the 6th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge. We have heard from the opening government, the opening opposition, the closing government, and the closing opposition. Dalito, have you talked to your parents about sex?
Yes, I have.
What did they say?
They said, my child, please just make sure you finish university before you bring home a child.
So they don't have faith that you'll take care of the kid? What did they say?
They want me to finish and be financially stable before I have a kid. So they're hoping I don't have a kid before that.
They're hoping.
Yes. And I'm doing well so far.
You're doing well so far?
Yes. Hi, Mom. I'm doing well so far.
So what are you using? Are you abstaining or?
I'm using preventative measures when I engage in intimacy to ensure I don't contract anything I shouldn't.
I like the word you're using. Intimacy. Podiaman, how are you feeling?
We're good, thanks.
You're good?
Yeah.
You're not hearing kucha chenga in the background?
Not having.
None?
None.
Nothing?
None whatsoever.
Hi, Bo. Confident. How are you feeling, Podium 3?
You're feeling alright.
You're feeling alright?
Yeah.
No nerves, nothing?
It is what it is.
Made of steel?
It's over.
It's over?
Yeah.
It is what it is?
Yeah, we've crossed the line. You can't do anything right now.
Okay. I see them accepting the situation.
In fourth position, we have opening government. In third position, we have opening opposition. In second position, we have closing opposition. And in first position, we have closing government. So here's a justification and why. First, we think in this debate, the team that speaks most to why there is an urgent need and why we must restructure how we approach education. We think closing government does an adequate job in explaining why it is an urgent issue and why we must reimagine how we approach that type of education. In as much as we do, however, value the contributions, especially from the entire opposition bench, opening opposition explains to some extent why we need to be cognizant of the fact that we could harm the education system itself by exaggerating. Closing opposition analyzes why victims of this might be affected differently, disproportionately, and why we might stigmatize to an extent where we demonize the ability of people to get help and approach those type of things. We don't think we got enough analysis from the opposition bench itself on explaining that this is not an urgent issue, firstly. Secondly, on explaining why, if it's not an urgent issue, why the status quo is okay, right? And if the status quo is okay, what other ways can we do to approach an urgent situation? We only get that type of analysis from closing government.
Those in fourth position, you were representing which university?
Lupane State University.
Third position?
HIT.
Second position?
Women's University in Africa.
First position.
Gwanda State University.
Gwanda State University takes it all this time. All cases haven't been made and the deliberations haven't been delivered. At this time, that is it. This was the 6th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge, brought to you by Say What, with support from the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. I am your debate mistress, .co.Nicole. Until next time.